Kelly. I'm Chief Executive of Manufacturing Northern Ireland, joined today by Mary Meehan, who's the Deputy CEO of Manufacturing Northern Ireland. Mary leads in our work in terms of people, amongst many other things. You're all very welcome along. Today is a session that we're going to do alongside both CPL, who are the people partner on behalf of Manufacturing Northern Ireland, and the Future of Work Institute. We're hoping this is going to be quite an interactive session. So whilst we'll kick off with Barry Winkless from CPL and the Future of Work Institute in a second or two, Barry will talk for maybe about 15-20 minutes just to kind of set the scene of what we're doing in terms of the partnership and what we're planning, but also some of the kind of main themes that are kind of discovered as CPL and Future Work Institute look around industries and businesses, not just here on the island of Ireland, but globally as well. What we're intending to do then is break out into a number of breakout sessions where will be smaller groups. And the intention of those breakout sessions is to really hear directly from you about what are the main issues, what are the main challenges, and really develop a bit of a work program that we in Manufacturing NI, the Future of Work Institute, and you as employers can kind of co-design and co-work on in terms of challenging that issue of people and the availability of labour within our businesses. Today is largely just about kind of creating that agenda to ensure, yes, of course, we're going to give you some ideas and give you some insight, but it's really about, well, what can we collectively do that'll actually make a difference in terms of this people side of your business. I had the great honour of attending an event, a conference recently, where there were some Japanese delegates. And whilst every business in the room talked about the single biggest challenge that they all face is their people challenge, one of the things that came out really strongly from that, particularly from the Japanese delegates, was that what we needed to do was actually create an environment that would attract people. They used a butterfly as a kind of image for this, where lots of people run around busily trying to catch butterflies, but the really smart businesses actually go and develop a garden that would attract those butterflies. So the work that we're planning to do is actually to try to create that environment where manufacturing is the industry of choice. Manufacturing is the place where people know they can have brilliant and amazing careers. And we need to create the environment in which those people are attracted into those manufacturing businesses. For us, this is the single biggest challenge that we need to face. Yes, there's opportunities in terms of innovation and export, et cetera, but our businesses are only as good as the people that we have been able to attract and retain within those businesses. So today is largely about trying to make sure we get to that place. Thanks very much for joining us. We will be recording this session. Hopefully the technology works when we go into those breakout rooms. But do feel free to send any questions, any comments in the Q&A or in the chat function that we have, and we'll be able to get to those as quickly as we can. As I mentioned, we're going to kick off with Barry Winkless from CPL and the Future of Work Institute. Barry is a world-renowned leader in terms of the people part of our businesses, taking the insight and understanding from industries right across the globe and applying them here on the island of Ireland in particular. Barry was very gratefully spoke at our leadership summit and opened up the summit back in May of this year, and it was enormously well received given his knowledge and insight and his real kind of strategic approach to this people issue, which is why for the first time ever, Manufacturing and I have partnered up with a business that concentrates on that people side, which is CPL. So Barry, great to have you along with us. We'll let you kick off now for the first 15-20 minutes, then we'll pick up the session beyond that. Thanks, Barry, over to you.
Right, thanks very much, Stephen. And I hope that that intro was recorded. I can use that now, when I'm being intro to any talk in future. So guys, it's really good to be here. I just want to call out a couple of things. A few colleagues online here today representing different businesses within CPL Group. We're very proud actually to have fairly significant presence in Northern Ireland and the broader island of Ireland. So, we have businesses in Northern Ireland, so it's really important to us that together, right, we can really not just face the people challenge, but grab it as an opportunity and really create Northern Ireland in particular as this destination for the best talent and the best types of organizations. The way the session is going to work really is I'm going to talk for about 20 minutes, talk about some of our research, some of our findings. I'm going to talk about some of our case studies as well, just to make it real for you all. And then I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Elysia Hegarty, who's the Associate Director in the Future Work Institute. She's going to run a breakout session, as Stephen mentioned to you. Now, before we get into all of this, I do want to call out one thing, and I'm going to just switch the slides for a moment. So this is where technology often will fail me, so just bear with me for a moment. Hopefully you can see that. Mary, if you can nod, that means you can all see that. Great, thanks very much, Mary. So guys, the first thing I'm going to call you to really is to use your mobile phones and capture this QR code, because that will give you free access to the Future Work World community, and that is offered really as part of our collaboration with Manufacturing Northern Ireland. And in there, you will get access to all sorts of goodies. You get access to some best practices, some videos with leading authorities in particular areas, and you will also then get access to things like white papers, thought leadership, and also upcoming events, etc., in terms of this overall Future of Work agenda. So I'll leave it on for maybe 1 second more, and you're more than welcome to be part of that community, a growing community as well, which is good to see. So guys, I'm just going to ask Elysia to also bring you in on to speed on a research project that we're doing at the moment, which you will hopefully all get access to again through our collaboration with Manufacturing NI. And this is the Changing Expectations of Work and Life research. Elysia, I might just get you to give an overview of this to the guys, and then maybe you can follow up, Elysia, guys, if you have any specific questions in regards to this research.
Yeah, thanks so much. So we're doing a really exciting piece of research on the changing expectations of work and life. And we all know that to attract, retain and engage employees into our organizations, a lot of what attracts them and the value that we offer as organizations is changing. And it's changing very, very rapidly. Only recently it was flexibility, and now it's other things as well that are driving people. So we are we're doing a great body of research at the moment, and one of the pieces of research is the survey that we are looking to send out to as many people as possible, really at all different tenures and levels and across organizations, to really capture what this would mean for them. It's confidential, it's anonymous, and individuals within your organization, if you do decide to participate, are not identifiable. But we do have an opportunity for organizations to become an affiliate with us. And so what does that mean? That means that you'll have the opportunity to issue the survey to all of your employees or a cohort of your employees to contribute in some way to this, capturing this data. And as a result, then the benefits for affiliates, 3 of your senior leaders will be invited to attend a private focus group session with us later this year to as part of Future Work World. So to mix with other senior leaders as well to contribute further to this body of research. You'll be invited to a launch event exclusivity. So as an affiliate organization, not only will you be invited to the launch event, but you will be the first to receive insights to this piece of research, which will be broken down by sector and by role and level. So you'll get a good understanding of what is meaningful for your organization and different areas within your organization. And then also the other benefit is brand enhancement. So affiliate organization brands will also be included in our publications as key contributors to the body of research, and also any PR or social media that we do as part of it. So if you are interested in contributing or becoming an affiliate organization and sharing the data or the survey in some ways, you can get in touch with me directly, or through hello@thefutureofwork.ie is the best way to get in touch with us if you would like to become an affiliate. Thank you.
Great, thanks very much, Elysia. Appreciate that. So guys, let's talk about the future of work. On our most recent research, 89% of leaders that we've spoken with, they're all highlighting the fact that yes, you know what, the future of work is either going to bring significant or very significant types of challenges. So I think all of us agree at a leadership level, and any of the leaders I'm working with at this moment in time are really thinking about all of the changes that are happening in this thing called work. So many of us are in the same boat. Many leaders are asking questions around work, around how to best attract people in terms of how to best create a destination organization that people actually want to be part of. And let me give you a little bit of context here. So all averages from what we see in our own research tells us that by about 2035, 25% upwards will be employed in what we call non-standard work, right? So that means that 25% of us will no longer be this thing called a permanent employee. We might be doing work in very, very different ways. And this could be anything from the gig economy all the way through to consultancy, to temporary. And if probably some of you out there in the audience today might be doing maybe a little bit of work on the side to your main job, because probably 15 to 20% of us, so maybe 1 to 2 in 10 of us, are doing some kind of side hustle, if you want to call it that, when it comes to work. And that's for a number of different reasons. Unfortunately, for some, it's because they can't quite make ends meet with the job that they have, unfortunately. For others, it's really about creating more meaning, because they mightn't get that type of meaning within work. So it's a really interesting environment that we're moving into today. There is no doubt about it that people are key to business. I spoke to somebody recently who's very, very leader in the creative industries, and I asked them the question, what's more important, right? The idea or the person? And it's obviously the person, because it's the person that develops the idea. It's the person that takes that idea to concept, and it's the person that takes that from concept into launch into the marketplace. So let's not forget that in this age of manufacturing 5.0, where we can utilize all sorts of technologies, that we still need to re-evaluate and re-examine the value of people within our businesses. Now, what is the future of work? Interestingly enough, when we started our own work a number of years ago, there was actually no definition of what this thing was. So we came up with our own. And I like to say that this will make you sound really clever in bars or in restaurants, when you want to talk about work, right? So for us, the future of work is the study and design of workplaces, workforces, and work tasks across multiple time horizons in the context of business and society. Now, the most important thing there really is to think about these 3 Ws. So when we really look back to the COVID challenge, shall we call it, that COVID crisis, a lot of the focus was really on what I would call the where we work, right? The workplace side of things. And that is absolutely important. And we're seeing a lot of advances in technologies, platforms, and approaches in terms of enabling humans like ourselves to do different types of work in different contexts. So when we talk about the workplace, we're talking about, the where we work in the physical, virtual, or digital realms. And, just to take one example of a lead indicator, we're seeing about 5 times more businesses coming in that virtual and augmented reality space than we had previously to the last kind of 20 years, over the last 5 years. So, this workplace thing, even where we work and how we can best utilize these different channels to do different types of work, is changing rapidly all around us. The second W we need to think about is this idea of the workforce. So how is the composition of the workforce changing? How can we as organizations tap in to different workforce types for different types of outcomes? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that through some case studies as I go through this talk, to maybe spark some ideas and conversations when you get to the breakout session. But it's also about how those workforces are now being managed and being motivated. And then we need to talk about the third W, which is the work task. And these are the mindsets, the tools, the methodologies, the technologies that actually deliver the work, right? And we know that AI is getting huge amount of airplay at the moment because of the impact of really what is the first fully intelligent technology that can have maybe on our jobs, on our careers, etc. And by and large, where the debate is falling down, I'm not saying if I agree with this side of things or not, is that, look, like previous technologies, it will probably create more than it will destroy, and it will probably create more job opportunities, but those job opportunities will be different to the kind of jobs that we're doing today. No more than 150 years ago, we had hundreds of job roles that no longer exist today. So when we talk about this idea of work, and we talk about this idea of attracting and retaining and all of this kind of stuff with around people, we need to think about these 3 Ws, because within these 3 Ws, the magic resides, okay? if we do certain things with these W's and we think strategically about the future of work, regardless of the size of organization that we have, we can actually create an organization that can outmuscle itself against bigger companies, bigger organizations, and even bigger countries. And I think really that's the opportunity when I think about the work the manufacturing NI is doing within Northern Ireland about creating not just these destination organizations, but how do we create this destination sector that really excites people, that people really understand what it's about, and that people can really think about manufacturing in a totally different context maybe to what they might have within their eyes. Because any of you involved in manufacturing will know that due to various technologies and different ideas and different methodologies, it's changing as rapidly as work in general is. So for me, one thing I'd like you to start thinking about is these 3 W's, and understand this, that we can create big and small opportunities, right, to change our organization in some way that will help us either to attract or keep or motivate the people that will drive our business forward. And I think that's really, really important. We've actually got quite a broad canvas when we talk about work and we talk about the opportunities that we have. So I like to say, regardless if you're a 10-person organization or you're 25,000 to 200,000 size organization, there are opportunities for all of us across those 3 W's. Now, let's get in a little bit to, you know, what does all this future work thing actually look like on the ground? What are we expecting that businesses will need to be like in order to be relevant for the types of people that are coming on the horizon? Well, I think the first thing was we did a lot of discussion around, you know, organizations being more human-centered. And in a lot of the companies we spoke with, there was a general feeling that, yes, by and large, we are making our organizations more human-centric. Well, we asked the question, what does that actually mean in the next 5 years? Let's move beyond the obvious stuff like we're going to be more human-centric. These are some of the things that came up, right? So, you know, how do organizations actually create more flatter structures, right? Smaller chains of command that gives people greater empowerment. We're moving into new generations that really focus on this idea of empowerment and some level of independence within work. And actually, it's a mindset that's cutting across all generations as we're starting to get more access to flexible working. The second one is this idea of a deeper understanding of the human experience. And this is a really interesting one. So if I think about all of the ologies, I call them out there, all of the ologies like sociology, psychology, and all this kind of good stuff. There's so many new learnings there in terms of how we understand what drives and motivates people. Very few of us are actually using those methodologies to get behind how we can drive change within organizations. So this idea of how do we get a better understanding of what makes us tick as human beings? How can we use those methodologies to help us on that journey? I think the third one is this idea of designing purposeful total experiences. So what that means really is, okay, you know, come into this organization. What's my path, right? Where am I going on this journey? How are you helping me on my journey of transformation? What role are you playing in that, right? Yeah, we're not in the place anymore where we are an organization, we 100% set the agenda. It's now what I would call a with economy, right? We have to work with people and design with people and design experiences and journeys of learning, whatever we want to call it, that actually transforms them in some way. This idea of a new approach to leadership, I won't talk about this too much. I'm sure we'll cover this in subsequent conversations, but this idea of leadership as a much more collaborative, co-creative and empowering model. On the horizon, we're starting to see this burgeoning approach to leadership that really focuses on 3 things, right? One is, how do we actually give our teams more autonomy with the right tools so they can manage themselves? And I change my role more to an orchestrator or a conductor than I do an actual old style leader. The second piece is, how do I make sure that I really focus on that wellness of my team, that total wellness of my team from multiple perspectives, and to make sure I have that kind of tools and thinking to help that. And then finally, you know, as opposed to thinking about how do I transform my organization, it's how do I actually transform teams and individuals that can therefore transform the organization. So when we talk about this idea of more human, it cuts across everything from flatter structures to, you know, inclusiveness. And I know that's a big word at the moment. I know there's some good work being done in Northern Ireland by various organizations on the diversity and inclusion side. How do you move to that authenticity in terms of doing that? And how do we actually demystify all of this technology that's coming with this kind of change in the future of work? So that's the more H bit, but obviously we're also seeing a world that has to become more sustainable and society centric. It has to think beyond its own four walls. It has to think about its impact to those broader shareholder and stakeholder groups, those community groups in which the organizations operate. So when we ask people around, you know, how much do we think organizations need to become more societal centric? Obviously 80%, 7% of businesses agreed. And what does that look like? It really means about thriving through being inclusive and diverse in terms of not just the big picture, but all the way from using inclusive and diverse teams and projects all the way through to using diverse suppliers to drive different types of thinking, different types of innovation. 360-degree positive impact, and we're hearing more and more phrases now around a regenerative approach. You know, that's more likely to take root more and more, particularly within the manufacturing sector. Responsible and ethical business practices. Care as a key business asset, which I think is a really, really interesting one. This really is about care for the people within your business, care for the planet, and care for the ultimate impact that you have, again, beyond the walls of your beyond the walls of your organization. And then this idea of shareholder, not just stakeholder, not just shareholder engagement as being key. And I'm not going to talk about technology within this context because we are going to have a deeper conversation when it comes to that over the next sessions that we will likely call up. But we are obviously seeing, for the first time really in history, what we would call hyper efficiency. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you really think back to an organization 50 years ago versus a modern digital focused organization today, by and large, organizations are being 100 to 150 times more efficient with 10 times less people. So that in itself is a really, really interesting kind of statistic in terms of where we're trying to get, which throws up all sorts of questions about the role of people and technology, how much is too much technology, et cetera, et cetera. So guys, I want to go a bit deeper here, and I'm going to share you a little bit of research based on our future of work model that we developed a couple of years ago. And within that, we looked at those 3 Ws that I mentioned, and we asked leadership teams to place where they are on some of those, what we call continuums today, and where they need to be over the next 5 years to be a destination organization for talent. So if I look at the first W, let's call it, and really that is within the workforce place. The grey Fs represent where, on average, those organizations felt they were today. And the pink Fs represent where they need to be over the next 5 years. You can see all sorts of stuff there, and I'm not going to go into those in too much detail, but I do want to call out a couple of these elements, right? One is the proposition one, which is really saying that, look, as a modern organization, you need to move away from this kind of, let's call it rat race between just salaries and remuneration and bonus, and you need to move more towards this total approach to an employer value proposition. And this is the one thing we're seeing a lot in industry at the moment, which particularly those lead organizations. Stephen mentioned, you know, world-class organizations at the start of his introduction. And we're seeing those organizations in that area really focusing in on this total approach, if we want to call it, to an employee proposition. And this is some work that we're doing at the moment, based on a model of a value proposition where we have identified 20 drivers of attraction and retention within organizations. And you can see them represented by those shapes around the outside of the circle. And then really trying to identify, well, within different cohorts, different countries, different generations, what are the kind of things that attract people to our organization? What are we strong at? What are we weak at? You know, what makes people come to the organization? And then equally, what makes people stay within our organization? What's the magic sauce, right? And we've learned a couple of things on this journey so far. We're often finding that investments are being made quite frankly, on the things that don't really make a difference to people in terms of why they would come and stay within an organization. So we can spend a lot of money on the wrong things. Okay, that's the first thing. I think then the second thing really is a lack of what I would call leadership cohesiveness on what the current and future value proposition of an organization for people is and what it needs to be. So I would say that the same level of focus that you may put on your manufacturing products, on your services, whatever they may be, same level of focus needs to be put on the value proposition for people. So think about it almost as new product development, but for propositions for people, right? That's the easiest way I can describe it, and everything that goes with that. And oftentimes it's a case of tying together the stuff you already have because people can't absorb. Actually, we have this really good value proposition. Part of it is also identifying the 5 things, regardless of what size you are, that you can be world class in. Okay. I always like to say the Marmite principle. You don't have to, not everybody has to like your organization. Okay. Not everybody needs to like what you're about, but it's important that you know what makes you unique, and that will resonate with the types of people that you need to work with. Now, that's obviously then linked in terms of how you get that message out, how you get that message to the right audiences, and how you're using digital and other channels to tap into the right types of people, both within Ireland, within Northern Ireland, and broadly at a global space as well. So first thing really is this move from, a package approach to a proposition approach. This is just an example of a piece of work that we did with a life sciences company in the rare disease space. And really the whole idea was to work with them on defining what we would call a show Bible that would represent the value proposition in a very connected way to their people within their organization, but also utilize it as a base level to develop out marketing programs, how their talent acquisition specialists would interact with potential candidates and everything in between. So all of this is relatively at kind of finger touching distance, I would say. And one of the things I would say that we will look at as maybe part of future sessions is this idea of designing a value proposition. We've done a huge amount of work in this space, and we're obviously happy to share that within the context of our collaboration. If we take another spectrum there, and let's look at this idea of what I would call this blended workforce. Now, for me, I get excited by this stuff because I'm quite sad, right? But there's huge opportunity in utilizing what I would call different worker types, different employment types for different impact, right? So if I'm working in a business that's highly seasonal, how can I utilize a type of contingent or temporary model that helps me deal with that seasonality but decreases my risk, right? If I'm in R&D, how can I tap into lots of different thinking without spending an absolute fortune on all of these experts that I have to have, within my team all the time? So if you look at something like General Electric, they've created a brain trust called GE Genius Link, and it taps into, I think, over 20 million experts, right, in terms of ideas by the hour to help with their R&D and their service delivery functions, right? If you look at the gig economy, right, we can now tap into a graphic designer for 4 or 5 hours on a particular project, and away we go. This is a big opportunity for organizations, big and small, in terms of adapting new types of workforce models. And a very, very simple example, and again, guys, I'm not going to go through this this slide ad nauseum. It's more that you will have this, and this will be shared with you post the recording, is thinking about utilizing temporary workers and using the temporary worker model as a new channel for permanent work. This was a project that was done by my colleagues in the FlexSource business, who really, understood with a client that, look, it's very, very hard. You're struggling to get these permanent type people. Why don't we use a temporary model that you'll tap into different types of workers that wouldn't necessarily be interested in permanent work? We will run that for you. And through that process, FlexSource enabled that client to tap into other workers that they wouldn't be able to get. And now some of those workers have actually become permanent employees. So that temporary model not only enabled a level of delivery, quick delivery, but it also then enabled a new channel for permanent workers for that organization. And it's really interesting to me that when we have this conversation about the future of work, nobody really thinks about this idea of workforce innovation. And particularly in challenging talent environments, it's a major play that many organizations can do, big or small, right? This might be a one-person thing. It might be a 100-person thing. It might be 20,000 people thing. It doesn't matter. It's this idea of tapping into these new workforce models. Now, I mentioned the leadership thing before, and the leadership piece for me is an interesting one, because if we talk about the future of work and leadership within the future of work, this gentleman for me represents everything about the future of work and the future of leadership. This is a guy called Ika Pannanen. He calls himself the world's least powerful CEO. And he calls himself that because he's designed his organization based on the biological cell structure, right? So he looks at small teams that have full ownership over their work and that they deliver the work from start to finish, right? So it's a great sense of ownership over that work. And we're seeing burgeoning types of organizations using this type of self-management thinking, right? So how do we give more and more autonomy to people, give them the right tools and thinking? And as a result, they have a greater sense of ownership over their work, and they have a greater, propensity of staying within that organization. Now, if we look at the work task bit, and again, I'm not going to go into these continuums in too much detail, but I do again want to call out a couple. One is the mindset, right? So this is a big one for me, and it's probably the thing I speak mostly about when I'm speaking to leaders like yourselves in terms of the future of work. If we look at the genetic makeup of what work looked like up until maybe 10 years ago, it could easily be represented by these colors, right? Orange representing this focus on, shareholder value. Let's get the money in. Let's focus, It's coupled with this kind of what I would call process improvement approach, right? Let's get good processes in place. Let's get our ISOs in there, let's get our Six Sigmas in there. Let's do all that kind of stuff. And really over to the right-hand side, there were some organizations in this thinking about sustainability. Very few organizations talking about things like wholeness and evolution and regenerative organizations and all this kind of stuff. Now, fast forward to today, and you're looking at this new genetic footprint of what an organization is and what organizations need to look like. And this is really what, to me, the genetic makeup of a organization needs to be, if you want to call it the DNA of the modern organization. Of course, we all have to make money. Of course, we need to be commercial enterprises, but also we need to have that equal focus on community, on sustainability, on ethical business practices. We also need to put a greater focus on really trying to create organizations that focus on this idea of transforming people so that they can continuously transform ourselves as organizations. I've worked with many, many organizations where the one wrong senior hire actually resulted in the closure of that organization, just to put that into context. And it shows you the kind of key importance of creating that environment that is really focused on the transformation of the individual so they can help transform your business. So we're seeing that big mindset shift happening rapidly in terms of what an organization's DNA needs to look like. And then, if we look at this, what I would call this, move from just human to human machine, and we're doing a lot of research in this ourselves at the moment. We're seeing different types of businesses now that have that combination of people, intelligent technology and process. This is an example called Isaac Care, which is a business within our CPL Service Source business. And this combines real-time data and information with, handheld devices coupled with a care workforce and enabling them to do more with less time and managing people within their homes, enabling people to stay in their homes with this perfect combination of people, process, and intelligent technology. And I think, again, we talk in the manufacturing context, obviously we hear a lot about manufacturing 5.0, but interestingly enough, when you look at manufacturing 5.0, it's putting the focus squarely back on people, right? And their ability to be resilient, on their ability to continuously upskill, on their ability to be very digital enabled, and their ability to use different types of transversal skills, in different ways, right? So again, this people machine thing is a key aspect. And again, just to give an example of a type of a project that we were involved in, using agile models, right? Having HR where you don't need a HR function anymore, right? Which is the project that the Future Work Institute was involved in. How do we have a small organization, give them all the expertise of HR so that their business is a professional business, but how do we do it by not having the unit? Well, you can use an agile model. You bring somebody in, you do it for a period of time, you set up the processes and the procedures, you give them the ability to fish, as I would like to say, and then you still have the HR capability, but you don't necessarily have the HR function and all of that goes with that. Okay, for those of you who are in HR, I don't mean to remove your jobs or anything like that, but it just gives you a sense of what's available and what's possible. And then finally, when we look at this thing called workplace, you know, everybody's talking about this stuff, but what are we seeing, right? A couple of things I suppose is interesting from our perspective. One is the reassessment of what a physical environment is actually for within a modern organization. So in a world where we might have more people working in a flexible way, what is the purpose of that environment? If you think about the manufacturing side of things, obviously we're starting to see some really interesting new challenges, right? So flexibility bias as an example, right? So if I have a manufacturing organization and the support services have some kind of flexible working model, what does that mean to people working within the manufacturing side? And generally what we're seeing is a greater focus on more sophisticated workforce and work scheduling tools that enables some type of flexibility, you know, for personal things, etc. But you can't necessarily change it up there. But we're seeing, again, that use of different types of workforce models that still gives flexibility, but still delivers on product development, still delivers on manufacturing processes as well. We're also seeing to see, as I mentioned before, a big focus now in on nailing that virtual environment. We're all used to using teams and different types of models, but we're seeing more and more richer models being used. You know, we're obviously within R&D, we're seeing more and more utilization of, you know, digital twin and all this kind of good stuff and the virtual factories. And that's going to grow and grow and grow as we see that, where we can trial things in virtual space. You know, where ultimately we can, I like to say, trial without fear. That's happening a lot. I think just one interesting piece of research to share with you guys, which is work that we did relatively recently, when we talked about preferences of working. There was what I would call the 2-3-3-2 as the overall preference. And by and large, in many of the organizations that we're working with, flexibility is here to stay. So forget about your one or two big news stories that you see out there. Many of the organizations that we're working with are fully committed to a level of flexible working. Now that will differ in different organizations, particularly in the tech sector. It's veering more towards maybe an anchor day. In other sectors, it's veering more towards a 2-3 or 3-2 split. But make no mistake about it, flexibility is here to stay. And also, you know, the impact overall, whilst we're still trying to really understand the total impact of this new types of working, you know, many studies, including our own, are showing an overall positive impact on wellness, depending on how we define what that thing called wellness is. So guys, look, we're going to move into the kind of workout session in a moment. So I just love you to remember a few things, right? One is that future work is totally within our control as an organization, right? Simple as that. As leaders, we can play around with 3 Ws. Even the most smallest nimble organization has an opportunity to do something within those 3 Ws. The largest organization has an opportunity to really focus on designing those 3 Ws that creates this destination organization. So just finally, guys, I'm going to flash up again. This one, which will cover all of some of the topics I covered on the talk there. It's our Future Work World white paper. So you can use, again, your phone to scan that, and that will bring you to a downloadable screen. That will give you a lot of the research and insights and much more detail than I covered here today in what that future work firm is going to look like, what it needs to look like in terms of really nailing the people value proposition. So with that, Elysia, I might hand over to you. I'm mindful of time, so I might let you kick in to the working session.
Thanks so much. And we will take, if anyone has questions for Barry, if you want to pop them in the chat, we will make sure that we kind of cover all of those. And I might take over. Yeah, super, thanks. In terms of, you know, the working session and crafting directions. So what we'll do in the next while is we'll put you into 3 groups where we'll ask you a specific set of questions. So bear with me now, I'll just start sharing my screen. You can see this, yes? You can see my screen, yeah?
Yes.
Yes, super, thank you. Yeah, so really we want to hear from you. We will use what we call it, this is very much a design thinking session. If anyone knows this guy, this is Walt Disney. The design thinking methodology that we use is called Dreamer, Critic, Realist. So we like to ask a dreamer questions where we have no constraints, no budgets, no virtual challenges or anything like that. What in a dream world would we like? Then we can get a little bit more critical, and then we can get a little bit more realistic in terms of, well, actually what is really within our our control and ability. So really, I know Stephen had mentioned and Barry had mentioned earlier as well regarding our collaboration with Manufacturing NI. We would like to hear from you based on what you've heard from Barry. What else would you like to hear from the Future of Work Institute? We will be continuing to collaborate with Manufacturing NI into next year, and really this session is really to co-create that with you so that we can deliver a series of workshops and panel discussions next year that are really aligned with current challenges that you have and the themes that you would like for us to discuss. So we're really keen to understand what current challenges you have and how you would like for us to bring forward some of that thought leadership that we have in the research that we're doing. So our first question is a critic question, which is really in relation to what significant challenges you see having to address between this year into 2025. So looking into the future when it comes to your people and your workforce. And then what are some of the big barriers or constraints that you're worried about? You'll get access to this Google Doc. I'm going to put it into the chat and you should all be able to get access to it. When you're put into your groups, I would recommend that you allocate a scribe or someone who you are happy to speak on behalf of your team. Each area will have a team dedicated and you'll be able to add your thoughts in here very easily to share with the group, and the same with team 2 and team 3. And then we'll come back and we'll have a little discussion and then we'll move into the next question. So I'm not going to go too far forward in terms of the questions, but I just want to make sure that everyone is happy with the task at hand. We'll give you about 20 minutes for this first part. Does anyone have any questions? I'm going to put the Google Doc into the file here. Everyone's happy with the task? I'll take that as a yes.
Elysia, just how long are you going to give for each of these sessions? Because I just see some people have dropped off.
Oh gosh, okay, we've lost a good few people, so we might just do 2 groups then. Yeah, so maybe since we've lost a few people, we might do 10 minutes for this. Is that okay? 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and have a bit of a debrief.
Yep, sure, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. I'm just going to reshuffle this now.
That's fine. Many people? We've 5 people, is it? 1, 2, so we might just do 1 group then. Susan, Petra, George, and Andrew. Are you guys happy to stay on for the duration?
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, no, that'd be great. Like, we'd love your contribution for sure.
Yeah, I think we stick to the 1, Elysia, at this point.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good, we'll get the full conversation. Do you want to kick off then?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll do that now.
Thanks, Connor.
Yeah, that's open now.
Yeah, it usually takes a few minutes. I feel like you need some like elevator music while this is happening sometimes. Super. Yeah, we'll give them about 15 minutes, then we'll come back and see what their thoughts are.
Yeah, I was going to even suggest, Elysia, we probably could have just stayed in the 1 room and had an open discussion.
That's what I thought we were doing.
Yeah.